Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. In today's episode, I am excited to share with you an interview I just concluded with Bill Rapier of AMTAC Shooting. Who is Bill Rapier? I'll tell you. And by telling you, I'm going to read a brief bio. Bill Rapier is recently retired after 20 years in the Navy, where his duty assignments included several years at SEAL Team 3 and over 14 years at Naval Special Warfare Development Group, also known as DevGRU, also known as SEAL Team 6. The positions that he held there included assaulter, breacher, sniper, team leader, troop chief, and military working dog department senior enlisted advisor. He is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a practitioner of the Sayoc Kali knife fighting system, and trains in both Western and Thai boxing. He and his wife live in the mountains of North Idaho, where they homeschool their 7 children and are heavily involved in the local church through leading worship as a family, father-son ministry, and all-around discipleship. Bill's company, AMTAC Shooting, as well as AMTAC Blades, you're able to find those online at amtacshooting.com. You can also follow him on Instagram at AMTAC Shooting. You can also find him on Facebook at American Tactical Shooting Instruction LLC. So many good things to learn from Bill. Not just how to protect yourself and how to fight, which he is literally a master of, but also just how to be a better Christian and a better leader of your home, a better husband, a better all-around Christian person. So please enjoy this interview, this conversation with Bill Rapier. Oh, one more thing. I need to tell you that the Growth Initiative is now open for, the waiting list is now open for the Growth Initiative. So I'm going to link nowthatwe'reafamily.com/growth initiative, and you can join the Growth Initiative waiting list. What is the Growth Initiative? Well, let me tell you real quickly. The Growth Initiative is a 6-week live training program for men that are fathers, Christian husbands, eager to grow, not only in their faith and in their marriage and in their ability to be a father, but also in their ability to provide and to lead themselves and to thrive in the marketplace with whatever their given, career is at the moment. So if you're interested in growing in all of those things, join the waiting list at nowthatwe'reafamily.com/the Growth Initiative. With that said, we'll get this interview going.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
Wow, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. So excited to hear from you and just, learn from you as well. So thank you for being with us here today.
Awesome. Elisha, thanks for having me on the show.
So I already gave a brief kind of introduction and description as to who you are and what you're currently doing. But I'm curious, in your own words, like today, right now, when you bump into somebody or meet them for the first time, like what do you tell them your life looks like? Who is Bill Rapier right now, 2022?
So right now it's a lot different than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Right now we live up in the mountains in Idaho and 7 kiddos, and we're homeschooling and heavily involved with church and running 2 businesses now, or 2.5. And life is good for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a full life, and it sounds like a very very fun and full life. So I'm excited to hear more about that. I'd love to kind of back up if we could. I know that you've got, you homeschool your kids. You guys live on kind of more or less of a homestead situation. You do a lot of training right now around the country, which I'm really excited to talk about as well. But could you back us up and kind of tell us a little bit about your upbringing and where you came from?
Absolutely. So my parents were missionaries. So I grew up on the mission field. We moved to Germany when I was about 5 years old. Lived in southern Germany, down Bavaria, for about 3.5 or 4 years. And then we moved up to northern Germany, Langhagen by Hanover. Lived there for another 3.5 or 4 years. And then moved stateside it was supposed to be a full year furlough. And then my dad ended up he's chosen to lead a regional team in Southern Africa. So we ended up moving there earlier than we'd planned on it. We moved to Swaziland in Swaziland is in Southern Africa. It's surrounded 3/4 by South Africa and 1/4 by Mozambique. It's a kingdom. It's a really cool spot. So we lived there for only about 2-ish years. And then my dad got recalled to work back stateside. So we moved to Colorado Springs, and that's where I finished up high school. And then joined the service. Like the day after I graduated high school. I guess faith-wise, as I was, with my parents being missionaries, it was very, I said the sinner's prayer at an early age, and then I was not super serious about my faith until I was actually in the SEAL teams. And I remember driving home from Colorado. And, it's late at night or early in the morning. I don't really remember, but it was dark out and kind of driving across the desert. And I just remember thinking to myself, man, I doctrinally, I don't believe you can lose your salvation. But if people would have looked at my life at that point, you would not have been able to look at me and go, oh yeah, he's a believer, because I wasn't living for the Lord. And so I started praying and asking God to give me a desire to change and to a desire to want to follow after him. And man, he did. It's amazing. Just I started reading the Bible, and it was almost like I was reading it for the first time. I mean, just it spoke to me so much more, and so much like, hey, this is actually how we're supposed to live, just practical stuff, and got plugged in with a church and a small group. And have since then been on the path to be trying to serve the Lord to the best of my abilities.
Awesome. What a powerful testimony, and what I think a prayer that so many people can relate to. Just, Lord, just give me a desire for you. Like, I don't disbelieve. I don't not believe. I do believe all this, but boy, my affection is not towards you right now. And he is so gracious to answer that prayer like he did in your life. Going back to your childhood, you said that maybe you didn't really take ownership of your faith, or it wasn't something that was really, it didn't really, I guess, inform how you lived all that much. Do you think that was something that, because your parents were missionaries, you were just around it? It was this thing that was like a part of life. Did you have a challenge at all, like distinguishing between like my dad's profession and what's a personal faith?
No, not really. I mean, like I'd never say that I rejected my faith. I always, there's never a doubt in my mind that, Christ is Lord, but he was not Lord of my life in my actions, during some of those times, I mean, going through high school, I kind of towards, my junior year, I started playing sports, started wrestling, and then started drinking a little bit. And that, that causes some problems, right? That was definitely not honoring to the Lord. Yeah. And then also, like, early on, going through buds and early on in the teams, I would say, man, looking back on it now, it was absolutely an idol in my life to make it through buds, basic underwater demolition / SEAL training. Like, I wanted that really, really badly. And I look back on it, it's like, man, it's by God's grace that I made it through. But I never disbelieved. I mean, going through Hell Week, just quoting over and over again, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Like, that was one of the big verses, going into Hell Week and going through Hell Week. So I didn't not have faith. I was not living my faith. And I don't know, I guess as I mature in my faith, I look at the, when in James, when it talks about, faith without works is dead, and, show me your faith, I'll show you my works, or I'll show you my deeds. And, so that's one of the things that I think is the easiest way to see if someone does have saving faith is look at their life. If you're saying I'm a believer and then you're denying Christ with your lifestyle, then are you really a believer, or are you someone that, from the parable of the seed that, and I know there's different interpretations of that, but, I would put the other category is, the seed on the rock and then the thin soil and with the thorns, is those aren't believers. And then the believers are, the 30, 50 and 100 fold. I may be misquoting that a little bit, but if we are believers, there's going to be fruit in our lives. And there was definitely limited fruit in my life.
Sure.
Early on as a believer.
So going back to your childhood and then kind of relating it to where you're currently at with your own family, because I've been able to kind of briefly witness you and your children. You've got you've got a culture. You've built a culture. You guys use a language, even the way you talk to your children, the way that you kind of do life. And I love seeing family cultures. Did you, growing up, have a strong family culture? Did you have siblings? Was it the type of thing? I see you with your young boys and with your daughter, working with them on a very practical level. Is that what you experienced growing up with your father?
Yeah. So my folks were very, thank you, Gideon. My folks were very supportive of us, very much encouraged us along our bent. That is one of the things that my mom would always say. We each have a bent in life, and my parents were very strong to support us in that. So yes, there's absolutely culture like that. There was a culture of, Bible time within our family, or family reading time in the evening. It's a little bit different from, we try to be deliberate about doing family worship time now. There's definitely some Vodi Bakum influence there.
Yes.
So got some conviction reading Vodi. But yeah, there definitely was a culture. And then the older I get, the more I realized how blessed I was to have godly parents.
Wow. That's such a cool thing to acknowledge. And like you said, the older you get, the more you grow in your faith. I think you realize the rarity of that. People that have truly pointed them towards Christ and exemplified the gospel, have lived as a result of the gospel. So that's cool that you can say that. So did you have siblings growing up?
Yeah, I had two sisters, and then when I was 23 and my folks had moved back to Africa already for a few years, they adopted two infants.
Awesome.
Two boys. So I now also have two brothers that are 22 now, I think. And they're doing well. They're away from home now and doing good things. So
that's awesome.
But I didn't grow up with brothers I didn't get brothers until I was in my 20s.
So then can you walk us through because I don't know if I had any family members that were directly, related to me that were like in my first line that served in the military. What was that like for you as a young boy? Did you have this desire to serve in the military from the time you were a boy, high school? What did that look like?
Absolutely. So, kind of going back to what I was just saying with my parents encouraging the bent that we have. I think I have pictures of me being 6 years or, at age 6 with old school OD green field jacket on, one of my dad's military hats and a painted on beard. Oh, and old non-functioning single barrel shotgun in my hand and probably some knives on me somewhere. So it was something that I wanted to do. And just growing up, living even in Germany, where it was really frowned upon. There's such a pacifistic culture there now post World War II. That like my dad got a lot of flack for me running around with camouflage stuff on, because they really equate Christianity with pacifism there. But yeah, so as I was growing up, that was really the only thing that I wanted to do. And then it would just vary between, I want to be a fighter pilot, or, I want to be special forces or whatever. And so early on, my dad said, well, if you want to join them, if you want to be basically a professional soldier, you should go to West Point. So that was what I had my sights set on for a long time. And I would say I was tracking in that direction until junior year of high school, and wrestling and drinking. And that very much derailed. All of a sudden, I did not have a desire anymore to go do another 4 years of school. And so as that, as I got halfway through my senior year, I was like, well, this is definitely not even an option anymore, because my grades are just tanking, and I just no desire to do that. So I just started looking at the different special operations groups and which one looked like the hardest to get into with the highest chance of seeing action. And so I looked at special forces and Marine recon and then the SEAL teams, and ended up, I think the Marine Corps recruiter could have gotten me, but I went there and I talked to him and I was asking questions. How is recon? Like, how hard is the training? And, and I told him I was thinking about maybe going to BUD/S, and the guy looked at me and he goes, because they do 5 mile soft sand runs. He's like, that's not even good for you. And I walked out. I'm like, that's what I wanted.
Nice. I want to do the stuff that's just so hard it's silly. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
I like it.
So joined the Navy, which I really, honestly, I didn't want to join the Navy just because, looking at it, you have a significantly higher chance of not making it through BUD/S than you do of making it through BUD/S. And I did not want to be stuck in the Navy. So I ended up, I joined as a corpsman. So you have to have at the time you had to have basically a secondary job, or for Army guys would be an MOS, military occupational specialist. In the Navy, they just call it your rating, what your job is within the Navy. And so I picked corpsman, which is medic, because I figured it was my backup plan. Basically, if I couldn't make it through BUD/S, then I could still go with the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps doesn't have their own medics. They use Navy corpsmen. And so I figured, well, at the very worst case, at least I want to be, walking around on the ground with carrying a gun, instead of being stuck on a ship. Then joined the Navy the day after high school, boot camp up in Great Lakes, Chicago, and then corpsman A school, Balboa in San Diego, and then right into BUD/S. And it took me a little while to make it through BUD/S. It's a 6-month program plus whatever the pre-training is, and I ended up getting rolled twice. I had.
So does that mean like held back? Is that?
Yeah. So basically, there's evolutions that. So you get kicked out of BUD/S one of two ways. You either quit, which is kind of the majority of people do, or you just continue to fail certain evolutions. Okay. So I made it through Hell Week. Honestly, it wasn't without a whole lot of problems. I don't think I failed any timed runs or swims or anything like that before Hell Week. And then post Hell Week, I could not run an 11 or 12-minute mile to save my life. It was horrible. And so the guys, the instructors, they were like, well, we know something's got to be wrong with him, because he used to be able to do this and now he can't, but they couldn't figure out anything medically. So I went into dive phase, which is the second phase, and just proceeded to get crushed because those instructors didn't know me. And they're just like, who is this guy that is just sandbagging on all these runs? And so we got to, you have to do a dive physics test, because basically you have to understand that if you hold your breath while ascending on a dive, you're going to die. Yeah. And so they make you go through a bunch of dive physics in order to do that. Well, sure. The last few years of high school, I had used a calculator for all of my long division. So I could do the physics portion of dive physics, but they did not let me use a calculator. So I could not do long division to save my life. At that point.
That's funny.
It was super embarrassing. Yeah. So me and like maybe 8 guys, we all failed the dive physics class. So we got rolled for dive physics, and it was super embarrassing. They put us in a remedial math class for the 2 months basically that we had to wait for the next class to catch up to the point that we were at. And the lady started the class off by going, she's got the whiteboard up and she goes, "This is how you add." And I'm just like,
oh, nice.
So shameful. So it was embarrassing. But I learned how to do long division, classed up with class 200, or picked up with them at the beginning of dive phase, still had not figured out how to run. So I actually passed pool comp, which is the big, like Hell Week and pool comp are the biggest 2 things that people quit and or are dropped for. Okay. So made it through that. And then I was on day 1 of Draeger dives, which is the closed circuit breathing rig that we use. Was on day 1 of that, and I'd failed a timed run that morning, and I got put in front of the basic training officer, and he's standing there, he goes, "Rapier, you got two options and they're both bad. He goes, one, you could go clean bedpans at Balboa, which is, being a corpsman, that probably would have been part of my job. And he goes, the other is you can go join first phase right now. And I'm like, I'll take first phase, sir. So I had to left his office, went to supply and got a white t-shirt again, which was probably the worst part of the whole thing. Cause when you get secured from Hell Week, they give you a brown t-shirt. You've been wearing a white t-shirt up until then. Okay. And so if like that brown t-shirt means more to guys than just about anything else, because that's the, hey, you made it through Hell Week t-shirt.
Nice.
So I had to go from, wearing my brown t-shirt, getting ready to do my first dragger dive to back into first phase. But the good thing was, it was suboptimal, as I would say now. But the pace of their runs was slow enough to where I was able to build back up. And they didn't make me go through Hell Week again, which was great. Okay. So I didn't get broke down again. And so then I finished up with class 201.
So then you went back to first phase, then basically just did all of Bud's, everything you had done except for Hell Week again?
They were like week 3 or 4. So I think I went from, I was supposed to do day 1 of dragger dives back to life-saving test. Where, you have to go save your instructor, a bunch of different ways from drowning. So
nice. So then beginning to end, then how many months were you doing that, the Buds?
So I was probably at least a year. I think I checked in Thanksgiving Day of 94. Yeah. Very depressing. Checking in on Thanksgiving Day. And they're like, get out of here. Like, what are you doing? You come back on Tuesday, something like that. Yeah. It was a long weekend.
Oh man.
And then graduated 95 sometime. Yeah. Probably mid to late 95.
Okay. So this was 94, 95. So, so this is pre 9/11. So military activity probably looked completely different than what it looks like today, and probably for much of your career.
We were, there was very few guys in the SEAL teams at the time that had combat experience. In fact, to fast forward a little bit, I went through our dive medical course and then our jump school, or basic static line jump school with the Army, and then the 18 Delta Special Operations Medical course. Went through all that stuff and then checked into SEAL Team 3. When I checked in there, the guys that were senior guys had never done anything for real. And that was terrifying to me at the time. I mean, I remember thinking, man, if I just get to do one real mission, then I'll be able to kind of sit back and retire and, feel good about myself. And and then, fast forward a few more years and 9/11 kicks off. I was actually sitting on the quarterdeck at Dam Neck, and the phone calls start coming in, and I was like, man, we're going to war. Wow. And then it went from, I just want to do one real mission to, a few years later, we're sitting in Iraq and, in a little airfield, or not a little airfield, and we're sitting at Baghdad International in one of the hangars. And if it had been more than a few hours, we're like, man, this is lame. Everything's getting so slow here, because we're doing hits multiple times in the day.
Wow.
Definitely a big change in perspective on that.
Okay. So can you talk us through so when you finished Buds, do you get assigned to like a team? How does that work?
So the way it worked for me, because I was a corpsman, I had to do additional medical training. All I had was the 3 or 3.5 months of corpsman. It's like the basic medical course. Okay. So I had to do the dive med training, which is like 2 or 3 weeks. And it's basically, you're learning stuff specific to dive medicine. Okay. Just, the different nerve issues that you can have, that basically dive specific injuries that you can get. So went through that, then went through jump school, then went to 18 Delta. We were at the last class at Fort Sam Houston, San Antonio. So the special operations medical course, we went through the short course. So it was like 6 months long. It's basically 6 months of just cramming as much trauma into you as they can. It was a phenomenal course. In fact, later on, I would do I did 2 weeks at Mercy Hospital in San Diego. And I remember the first time I watched the trauma doctors go through a code, like when they were done with it, I'm like, man, I knew like 95% of everything that doctor said.
No way.
Here's the thing though. It was only like head smarts.
Yes.
It was all like he would say something. I'd be like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I could give you the textbook description of it, but I didn't actually know what it is.
Yeah.
So anyways, so went through that course. And then towards the end of that course, they got orders, and they let us choose orders, but they let all the married guys pick first. And I was not married at the time.
Okay.
And then they went by class ranking after that. So I actually really wanted to go to SEAL Team 2 because they go to Europe and they ski and they work with the Germans, or did back then.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, I used to live over there. I speak German almost like a native. I've been skiing since I was like 5 or 6 years old. Like, this is where I need to go. And no, God had other plans.
Yeah.
I went to SEAL Team 3,
Okay.
Deployed to the desert twice with them. Honestly, didn't really like it. I mean, like, there's great guys there, but,
Sure.
And I do have very fond memories, but I wanted to leave there as quickly as possible. So I graduated from 18 Delta and just drove straight out there. We had kind of heard through the grapevine that a SEAL tactical training class had already started. So they're like, oh, the rumor was, don't bother going out because you're just going to sit around. And I'm like, well, I don't have anything else going on, so I'm just going to go out there. And I check in, and it's actually the guy that I checked in with just died recently. But he goes, well, we started 2 weeks ago, but all we've done is medical training so far, so you can hop right in. So,
oh, nice. So instead of waiting around, you got a little bit of a
So it ended up putting me like 6 to 8 months ahead of my peers that I graduated 18 Delta with, which was great because I definitely did not want to sit around. I wanted to just jump right in. So I did my first deployment at Team 3, and then was able to screen to go to Dev Group in between the next deployment, which is basically, so a workup for deployment at the time was between a year to a year and a half to get ready. So screened to go to Dev Group, and then found out that I'd screened positive, I guess, right before I deployed. Deployed again to the Middle East, and then came back. This is all still pre 9/11. Came back, and then I left within a month or two of returning from that deployment.
Interesting.
To go to the East Coast.
So can you kind of talk us through what you said it's Dev Group or Dev Development Group?
Group. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. Can you explain that to me? Like, because you're SEAL Team 3, and then is this another team within this?
Yeah, it's a different SEAL team, a little bit different mission.
Okay.
You go through a selection process. And it's a really good selection process because you have to already have done 2 successful deployments. You have to have a good reputation within the SEAL teams. And then there's a whole battery of psych tests and physical fitness and all that stuff. And then that's just to get a shot at it. And then you go there, and then out of all these, we started with like 50 or 60 dudes in our class that were all like good guys, like good SEALs. And then probably 40% of those guys get dropped just because they're not, meeting a standard, or they're not learning something fast enough.
Okay. So more or less kind of a hot, like the all-star team a little bit, like you've had to have some success and be equipped.
Yeah. It's a different mission. Yeah.
Different mission. Okay. So that was where you were at when 9/11 happened. You go to war. It sounds like you saw quite a bit of action from the get with 9/11. What were you thinking in regards to marriage, family, your future? Were you just taking this like one day at a time, 1 year at a time, or did you always have a vision for marriage and family and kind of like what your life looks like now?
So it's kind of funny because I think to a friend of mine that I did a platoon with that he had some broken service time where he'd gotten out and actually worked for the navigators. And then came back in, and he kind of discipled me in a platoon. And, I was like 20 years old in that platoon. And I was like, I'll get married when I'm 25. I'm like, I'm confident of that. And he pointed me to that verse in the Bible that says, like, don't say on such and such a time, I'm going to go do this, but rather say, if the Lord wills it. And so I didn't end up getting married until I was 30.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So pretty late, especially for around this area, like so many of our local people around here, they're getting married at like 20 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, like I wasn't opposed to getting married. Like I figured I would get married.
Yeah.
I wanted to get married. But just God did not put the right woman in my life. And also like God put the right woman in my life when it was the right time, when I was also ready for it.
Sure.
So I met my wife, I don't know, 10, 11 ish, somewhere in there.
2010, 2011. Okay.
Or no, I'm getting numbers mixed up now. No, we got married in 2007. So it would have been like 2003, 2004 ish.
Okay.
Maybe 2005, right around there when we married, started dating. And then, that was the height of the war. So I was downrange 3 months out of every 9. And then the 6 months that I was back stateside, more than half of those were spent on the road, doing training. So when I decided I was going to ask her to marry me, it was, I got back from deployment. I basically had 6 months before I was going to deploy again. So I had 2 months to get a ring and ask her dad permission, and then pop the question to her, and then like, well, let's get married. So 2 months to plan a wedding, and then got married, and then had 2 months of being married, and then deployed. And then I think 2 weeks into that first deployment of me being married, she sent me a picture. I remember I'm sitting in a morale tent in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, typing on a little Panasonic Toughbook. And I get a email from her with a picture of a positive pregnancy test.
Oh, nice.
So that was
crazy.
That was cool. Yeah.
So then what was that? I mean, that's a crazy thing that your wife signed up for, because how many years did you keep serving after marriage and like after having kids? What was that like?
So fortunately, I was already fairly senior. That was the last pump that I ended up doing as a team leader.
Okay.
So I told him, hey, after this deployment, I need to, because I'd already been in the squadron for like about 7 years, or 7.5 years. So like, I was like, hey, I need some downtime.
Yeah.
So finished that last pump, and then did a low, states. I still at the command, but just a different job. Did that for a year. It was definitely harder mentally. That first deployment, being married, like the whole Old Testament, the young men shouldn't go off to war until they've been married for a year.
Yeah.
Man, I see so much wisdom in that now. Like I didn't really have a choice in the matter. But I see a lot of wisdom in that, just because it was harder mentally for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, did that. And then I deployed 3 or 4 more times at least.
Wow.
After that, but I had some downtime stateside, but before kind of getting back in the mix.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So then when you and your wife got married, had you guys talked kids, children? Were you guys aligned with that? Or is that something that you kind of both grew together in as your marriage went on?
So I think, I'm pretty sure I did, before we were married, I did say something like, that's it. I think 7 kids is I said it's a good even number to shoot for. So I think we were both kind of tracking on the same, how serious that was at the time. It was just like, hey, looks like a good plan. I think our pastor at the time had like 5 kids, and we just thought that was huge. Like, oh my God, like how on earth do they manage 5 children? So Yeah, that, and then the homeschool piece we actually talked about before we got married. It was short. Like I think I already had a ring in the works and like getting ready to propose. But we're up in Wheaton. My parents had moved back from Africa, and they're living in Wheaton, Illinois. And my brother, so we're there visiting. So I took Mariah with me to kind of meet the family, and we're there visiting. And my brothers are telling me how at Christmas time they sing Kwanzaa songs and Jewish songs and Muslim songs along with Christian songs. And I just remember like indignation. I was just like, and I remember looking at Mariah and going, that's it. Like I'm not going downrange and like spending this time there, and friends are getting killed, so that our children can be taught that all cultures are equal, but also look at all the bad things America's done.
Wow.
And so, because I'd kind of been anti-homeschooling before that, living in Africa, some of my sisters were homeschooled for a little while. And I just kind of remember looking at it like I went to full-on socialist schools in Germany. The school that I went to in Africa was absolutely a socialist school. My English teachers would argue with me on, the merits of socialism over capitalism. And I was, at 13 or 14 years old, I was game to, no, you're wrong. And so I had the attitude of like, well, I was able to get through that, so they should as well. And now I look back on it, I'm like, man, that's just by God's grace. Like, that's how God made me, is that I was good with telling a teacher, no, I think you're wrong. And most people aren't made that way. And now I really look at it as it's time. Like, how much time do you have? I look at it back when I was active duty. I would leave for work around 6:30 in the morning. So before my children would wake up, I'd get home at 4:30 or 5. And then my kids went to bed at 7. So how much time is that really for me to influence them?
Yeah.
Versus from the moment, as soon as they start going to school, they're going to be around 7 or 7:30. They're going to be standing out front waiting for a school bus with other kids. As soon as they get on the school bus, they're also with other kids. And basically at each level, the vast majority of the teachers, the vast majority of the other children that they're going to be around are probably going to have a worldview that is not congruent with mine. And that is not, if my chief duties as I see them is to know and to give glory to God, right? That's my number one purpose in life. I do that by, honoring him, following his commands to the best of my ability, loving my wife, and raising my children to know and love him. Like those are the most important things. So if raising my children to know and love Jesus is, right up there with the most important things, then how dare I outsource that and just hope for the best?
Wow.
So I would encourage anyone listening to this that is not homeschooling. I was telling Elisha before we got going, I'm like, I will stop training if guys ask about homeschooling, and we'll talk about homeschooling for a little while, because the training I do to protect yourself and your family, like that's you winning now. But if we lose with our children growing up, and the old adage of, when you give your children to Caesar, and don't be surprised when they come back Romans. Yeah. Like, we lose, it's a bigger loss. So yeah, I would really encourage anyone listening to this. It's not, you don't have to have a degree in teaching people. There's plenty of homeschool co-ops. It's not rocket science to teach your children, and no one loves your kids more than you do. Yes. So yeah, you guys should all be doing that.
Yeah. I love it. Well, it's interesting how you mentioned when you were processing the concept of homeschooling versus public schooling, and you were relating it to your own experience. You said, well, I made it through that. Like, I came out, all right. Rather than even asking the question, was that is that the best way to equip my kids? Like, is our
Yeah.
goal just to have our kids get through it? We say, oh boy, they got through it. They survived. They held on to something resembling a Christian faith. Or is our mindset, boy, we want to disciple these kiddos. And while we have this short season, it is such a short season that they are
100%.
under our roof.
Yeah.
And the hours are so finite that we have that strong influence in their life. And rather than saying, hey, they can make it through in this program, or they might be able to survive through this program, say, boy, I want to do all I can to equip them with the faith, with the tools, with the knowledge, with the wisdom that is really necessary to walk in this life as Christians. With where you're currently at with your family, what is it there? You guys live on a farm, or you guys live on a property. Are they out doing hands-on work with animals? Are they building things? Or are they in the books all day? What does their life look like?
They're definitely not in the books all day.
Okay.
They get up in the morning and they'll go out and do chores, and then different kids are responsible for different meals. So like the kids are actually doing meals for each other.
Oh, cool.
Then generally my wife will do some sort of Bible lesson with them, and then they do their school for a while, and then they're back out running around outside and yes, building things. Number one daughter is trying to do a quail business right now. So she's 14 and she built a quail pen, and she went and acquired like 50 quail.
Wow.
And has called around to the local grocery stores to she doesn't have a contract, but they've told her they will buy quail eggs from her at a certain price. And it's like, so I really encourage that. Like I guess part of that is I didn't grow up doing small business stuff. Yeah. And now that we're running a couple of businesses, I really enjoy that. So I'm trying to encourage my children in that as well. And then we've got church stuff and our homeschool kind of co-op group going on. So yeah, there's definitely, like you said at the beginning, life is very full right now.
I love it. What can you just tell me real quick, the ages of your children?
So my oldest is 14, and then she's a girl. And then the next 5 are boys, 12, 10, 8, 6, 3. And then the youngest is.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you've got a youngster and then you've got a teenager. That's pretty awesome. I love that. Something else that, made me really happy was to hear that you guys actually play music together as a family a lot too. And you said you do worship as a family, and sometimes you even lead worship at your church, kind of with different members of your family. Is that something that you had a heart for from the get, or was it something that just kind of evolved over time?
So I did not grow up playing an instrument. In fact, in a funny story, my parents put me into piano lessons in Germany. And, the piano teacher was a very strict German lady, and we didn't really get along very well. And I remember one time forgetting that I was supposed to go to her house after school and running the whole way to get to her house. And I'm like a sweaty mess. And she was just not happy with that. So I did not continue with piano lessons, which I really regret now. I kind of wish my parents would have forced me to continue. Sure. So it wasn't, and then I'd messed around a little bit with guitar when I was 13, but it was right before my first deployment. I told my dad, I'm like, I'm going to have all this time, because it was an ARG deployment. So I was going to be on a ship for way too long. And so I told my dad I'd be interested in learning guitar, and he gave me a guitar and a case. And it's funny that I still have that same guitar, still have the same case.
No way.
I generally don't lead worship with it now because it doesn't have a pickup on it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's just funny how, I remember learning, down in the berthing space, playing guitar there, or, or up on the deck of the ship, going through the Persian Gulf, and never would have thought, 25 years later, I'd be leading worship. So that, and honestly, it was not something that, I was not looking to do that. I'm okay at playing it. Like, I'm not incredibly musically talented. I'm okay. I
Sure,
can,
you can keep rhythm and make chord changes.
like,
Yeah,
I can do that. And I can do some leadership stuff.
Nice.
But I'm not like, the most amazing guy musically. So I was really hoping that someone else would take it at our church. And actually the guy that I was really hoping that was a professional musician and just loved the Lord, him and his family were driving to church a couple of years ago, and they icy morning on one of the turns, and him and his daughter were both killed.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you drove right by it when you came up to do training with us.
No way. What a tragedy. Wow.
So that was super sad. And then kind of, we just got to a point where I'm like, well, I should, and it really started post-COVID because, we, like most other churches, we shut down for a short period of time when COVID hit, because we just didn't know what was going to go on.
Yeah.
How bad it was going to be. And then as soon as we kind of figured it out that, hey, this isn't really that big of a deal for most people, we came back, but some of our older musicians did not come back. So it has been, so I would say I was somewhat reluctant, and it was kind of there's really no one else and I can do it. So I probably should, because I'd led worship for, some services overseas. When we were downrange, I'd done a little bit of worship stuff. I'd done it for some small group stuff back in Naval Beach, but definitely never for church.
Yeah.
And man, it has just been such a blessing. Like, we have probably, 8 to 10 of us up there in the mornings. Half of them are younger people.
Awesome.
And yeah, I've got number one son's up there with a banjo, number one daughter with a fiddle.
Nice.
Number two sons in what we call the Mandalorian section, sitting next to my dad with a couple other younger boys that all play the mandolin.
What? You've got multiple mandolins on your worship team?
Multiple mandolins. Yeah. So
yeah, you don't see that very often.
It's pretty, it's just been a huge blessing to do that. And just to see the heart of these young men and women, because they're now leading worship for the youth things. And it's just been super cool to see that. And then also it makes our, family worship at home. It's like, all right, everyone grab your instruments. And
yes.
It's cool.
Oh, that's great. You were mentioning something earlier about kind of the way you and your wife start your day. And I was really intrigued by that, because my wife and I just are just so grateful to have, like a weekly planning session, monthly check-ins, looking at quarterly goals and just evaluating life. And it sounds like you guys have something that really keeps you on the same page, organized. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we started this maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and if I could reach back in time and choke myself and say, hey, knucklehead, you should have been doing this as soon as you got married, I would absolutely do this. So for anyone listening, I would highly recommend that y'all institute this. So basically we get up in the morning and we'll have some quiet time where we'll sit there and we'll read the Bible. We're not reading it. I mean, we're co-located, but we're not reading the same thing. Whereas where we're each at, we'll read the Bible if we have enough time. We'll also read maybe another. I'm reading 1689 London Baptist Confession right now.
Nice.
That's my other spiritual reading. That's a good
light read. I like that. Yeah.
And then we'll pray together, and then we'll discuss kind of the plan of the day. Like, what do we have going on? And then usually it's plan of the day and plan of the next couple days coming.
Okay.
And man, that has just been such a great, it's just been a very good thing for our marriage, for walk with the Lord. It's been a good thing. So I would really encourage, anyone, if you're not doing something along these lines, I would really encourage you to do it. It's worth losing a little bit of sleep to, be able to be in the Word with your wife and to kind of talk through, hey, what's the plan of the day, especially if you live a maybe non-standard life, i.e., hey, my job is not, it doesn't always start and finish at the same, we've just got so much stuff going on. It's really, very important to talk about, hey, what do we have going on?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to hear about kind of what you have going on currently with your businesses, but maybe as a way to kind of segue into that, could you talk a little bit about that transition from being in the military? Because you served a full 20 years. Is that right? You're 20 years.
20 years in a month.
20 years in a month. Okay. And pretty much that entire time, well, yeah, because you said you went to Buds right when you're in. So for the majority of that time, you're in the SEALs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Pretty much that entire time. So what was that like more for you on like a personal level? Like you're just as a man, I'm speaking like as a man, as I'm 31, I've got 4 kids, and yet I'm so prone. My propensity is to just like place my identity in the dollar amount I'm bringing in, or, the activity that I'm doing for my job in the given month. And I mean, from my perspective, it seems like the job that you had could really lend to that, because that's a lifestyle. You're putting your life on the line. The training that you're doing is nonstop. It's a full, you're in all the way when you're doing that. So what was that like for you coming out of that, starting businesses, being a father, and was that a challenge for you while you were in and then coming out, with where your identity was? You're like, who am I? Am I a Navy SEAL, or am I a father? Am I a Christian? Am I a husband? What was that like?
Yeah, so that really, it brings up a great point. It was actually the thrust of father-son ministry, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, for a whole year, and it's your identity in Christ. And yeah, I mean, I've watched a lot of guys go through that crisis of, well, what is my identity now that I'm no longer kicking doors on a daily basis? And by God's grace, I have not had issues with that. There's been so few times that I'm like, I think that the first time where I was like, man, I miss it a little bit was watch that movie. Was it not Horse Soldiers? So the one at the beginning of the invasion of Iraq, maybe 13.
Oh yeah. 13 Strong or something. Yeah.
So just watching that and like seeing the, like, as their captain is like going and he's like trying to get the mission, like, cause like, that really resonated. I remember being in that, like, put me in, coach, like, are we going to get it? Are we going to get it? And so that brought it back a little bit, but honestly, like, man, I got to do so much cool stuff, got to work with so many cool guys. It was a great time, but I'm doing other great things right now. And honestly, I'm doing more important things right now. And that's raising my kids to know and love Jesus. Like, that is more important, being involved in our local community and trying to, encourage other men and other boys to know and love Christ. That's more important than me going downrange and kicking doors. And it was a great season of my life to be able to do that. I'm very grateful that I was able to do that. Grateful to God, number one, to my teammates. But no, I don't. When guys are like, do you miss it? Not really. Like there's little elements of it that I miss. But I don't miss it. I didn't go through the whole, start drinking heavily because you're not in the teams, and like, it just wasn't it wasn't, it's like, no, we're moving on. Like, there's not, in fact, it's one of the things that I tell people in training. I'm like, yeah, I do have on my bio that I was a SEAL. And if that gets you to come train with me, great. Like, I did earn that. However, I don't want you to come back and train with me because of what I did 20 years ago. Like, I want you to come back and train with me because you're getting the best possible training that you can get. So no, I'm excited to be doing what we're doing now, and just kind of, seeing what God is teaching, and the direction that we're going, and the challenges. Definitely not easy. Like, I think I've been busier and to some degrees, and in certain circumstances, more stressed being a civilian than in the service. Cause just there's a lot going on now. And then so something else to speak to, just what you were talking about, like identity in, dollars, like income. I think for guys in, I don't really know you that well. But I would place you in kind of the category of a lot of my friends, just demographically. And it's generally guys that are, they're doing well. They're successful in business. They're following the Lord. Surety of income, I think, is one of the easiest idols to succumb to for that demographic right there, because it's taking something that is good. We're supposed to, if we don't provide for our families, we're worse than infidels, right? So we're supposed to be working. So that's a good thing. And so the devil comes along and twists it a little bit and goes, hey, your identity should be wrapped up in making money. And it shouldn't be. Yes, that's something that you need to do. However, that is not what your identity is about. Your identity has to be in Christ first and foremost, then in being a husband, and then in being a father next, and then, maybe being involved in your church, and then, making money is something that you need to provide for your family somehow. But it should not consume you. And that has been not that I'm worried about that, but I guess just coming from being being an active duty guy, whether I was downrange, going 100 miles an hour, or laid up on my couch for 2 months with a broken leg, like my paycheck did not change. It was still there, the 1st and 15th, every month. Now, being a civilian, like as another one of my friends told me right after I got out, he goes, Bill, sometimes as a civilian, you got to hustle. And I get what he means by that is like, hey, you got to so I've had a hard time kind of switching it off sometimes. And going from, I've hunted way less, being as, we live in an amazing spot. I can hunt. I have hunted in my backyard. Actually a really cool thing. We had to shoot a nice little buck with my number one daughter got to do it.
Oh, cool.
But just being able to shut it off and go, hey, I'm not going to worry about this right now. I'm not having boundaries with phones and emails and actually we've hired a couple gals that have been hugely helpful with that, to where I really answer very few of my emails anymore, or directly answer them anyways. That was definitely a stressor in my life, trying to stay on top of all that stuff. So now having people that are helping with that is huge. And it does allow me to step back a little bit. And actually one of the things Mariah and I were just talking about this morning, one of the podcasts she was listening to, this couple was, they run a business together, and they were talking about, they take a month where they just go someplace else. They don't do any business stuff. And they just, they flip-flop days of, just having time to just go think and pray and read and just kind of refresh and get direction.
Yes.
And, I don't know if we can swing a month right now, but
that would be she elbowing you saying, hey, I got an idea.
Definitely. Yeah. She's I'm just thinking, I'm thinking dollars. I'm where are we going to rent a place for a month? Are we not going to work for a month? But I think that the idea is sound. And it is something that we've been doing on a smaller scale, is just having those times to go, hey, are we doing the right thing? One of the things that we've talked about is potentially next year, me cutting my travel in half, just because, right. So this year, I think I've got 12 away trips. Those trips are anywhere from 4 or 5 days to the longest one was 11 days. 11 days, way too long. Just where my kids are at right now, I think I need to be around more. And also that could open up some other business things that we've been wanting to do. We've been wanting to do this kind of a training group, national training groups, putting out monthly curriculum that would be online, for a core group of guys. I think it's a phenomenal idea. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. And I think we've had the infrastructure built for it online for almost 2 years now. And I just haven't had the time to, it's helpful to be married to a web developer.
I like it.
So I just haven't had it because I want to make sure when we jump into it that I actually have enough time to devote to doing that. So like, that's one of the things, and that's another thing I really would encourage guys to do is taking that real estate term of highest and best use, of like that's how you're supposed to evaluate properties. What's the highest and best use for this piece of property? It's wasted on real estate. Highest, best use for your life, like for serving God. Like how is, and I think at least on a quarterly basis, you should be asking yourself that is what is like, am I, I've got, I'm 45 now, so I've got maybe another 40 years. Like that, hey, am I serving God to my highest and best use for his glory? And so I think that's an important thing to take time and look at.
Yeah. In regards to your current businesses, I've been able to attend one of your 2-day training courses, which was awesome. I did buy one of your knives, which is awesome as well. One of your blades. Are those kind of your two main businesses right now? The knife business and your training. Your training.
Yeah.
Actually, probably, I don't know if I've even shared this with my listeners, but I had no clue what I, like many people over the last couple of years, have taken, protecting my family. I think it's like, I want to protect my family. And so I've bought my first guns over the last 6 months, and, just started being more thoughtful of that. And it's funny because both of my guns, I was like taking the tags off of them when I was driving to your course. I had not taken those things, taking the wrappers off of those things. And I just bought whatever ammo. I think I was the salesman's best case scenario. I went in and I was like, hey, I just need a bunch of stuff, and he just loaded me up and took my credit card. So showing up there, I was like, boy, I don't know. I don't even know where to start, and I felt like I jumped into the deep end because you do high level training. I mean, your abilities are high level. It seems like a lot of your clientele are guys that take it very seriously and train often and are very, equipped and very skilled in the craft, of shooting and being good with just self-defense and fighting. What would you say to a guy like me before, I showed up to your course? It's like, how do you get started? Because again, I'm talking to guys that are my age, my stage every day that are buying a gun for their first time, that are being more thoughtful about protecting their family, getting security systems. So what would you tell a total newbie like me?
So I guess first off, just to fill the people listening to this podcast in, Elisha jumped in to the Intro to Winter Skills course, which, yes, there was pistol and carbine use in there, but really that was kind of a small portion of that class. So basically this class started with, we're all going to carpool because you can't even drive where we're going. And then you have to have all your equipment for the next 2 days of training and camping out in the snow and snowshoes. And we start with about a half-mile walk through the snow to get to the training site. And then we've got to get stoves going and make water and make food and build shelters and then we'll go shoot. And then come back and let's do a fire making class. And I think we did a mindset talk then around the fire. And then the next day, get up and do it all again until we walked out that evening. So that was, it's actually the first time I'd done an open enrollment class along those lines. I really liked it. I think I'm going to do it again. I love doing winter skills like that. And I think it was, the guys really enjoyed it. I think it was a good class.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
But that is definitely not where I would say for someone to start. Yeah. Just jump into this class where it's definitely right into the deep end of things. So where I generally tell guys is, so if we go down the list of what's most important to protect ourselves and our families, number one is awareness. If you're lacking in awareness at any point, right? I mean, just if you're listening to this now while you're driving, if you look down at your phone for a few seconds and drift a little bit to the left, that's potentially it for you. So having awareness, which starts off as situational awareness and then leads to big picture awareness, kind of intel picture of what's going on in your area. That's the number one thing that gets you out of a bunch of problems. That lets you see the shady people, 100 yards away on the same side of the street as you, and you're like, let me go ahead and cross the street, or let me box around this block, or let me just go ahead and get into my car now and drive someplace else. So awareness is number one. Then the next one would be 100% safety with your tools. And when I say tools, I mean, firearms, blades, and anything that you're going to use to protect yourself and your family. The odds of you using your tools to protect yourself are very low. So if you can't be 100% safe around your family with those tools, honestly, you're better off put the guns in the safe, wait for things to truly go crazy, and then pull them out. But it's not hard to learn how to be 100% safe, right? Finger off the trigger, don't sweep people, gently reholster, like all that stuff. It's not hard to do. It just requires some discipline. So 100% safety. Then the next one would be actually making sure that your gun goes bang when you want it to go bang. And people are like, that's easy. Yes, it's easy. And also I watch guys all the time pull their pistols out and they go click instead of bang first, right? We call it dead man's gun, no round in the chamber. So teaching a proper loading procedure, or what I call a circle of awareness. So all those things we haven't even gotten into actually pulling the trigger yet. Those things are more important. Then the next would be a clean draw stroke from concealment. So when you go to the range, don't put on an outside the waistband holster. It's very popular right now in industry. Put a battle belt on and kind of look like a soldier or a cop. And the reality is you don't ever wear that.
Yeah.
So why train with that, right? If the objective is to protect ourselves and our families, then we should train with the same tools that we carry, and we should carry them the way we actually carry them on a daily basis. So everything I run, other than the night vision class that I do, or if I'm teaching, cops or military guys, everything else that I run is concealed. So starting off with everything from concealment, being able to pull your pistol out and get a decent shot in. Then the next two things would be, and I put these on the same plane, other strong hand only blade deployment and targeting. So being able to so I'm a right-handed shooter, right? I'm right-handed. So I refer to my right hand as my strong hand and my left hand as my other strong hand, because words matter and we shouldn't say strong hand and weak hand. That's just horrible. Right. I have a strong hand, other strong hand. So if I can, with my other strong hand, deploy a lethal tool, it makes me an order of magnitude harder to deal with. I mean, just having taught this to a bunch of guys now, it is way, way harder for me to deal with. When we put training stuff on, way harder for me to deal with someone if they can produce a lethal tool with from either side. And just think, someone's going for your pistol, and you put your strong hand on top of their hand on top of the pistol so they can't pull it out, and then you pull with your other strong hand, you pull your blade out. And that allows you to win. It's super, super easy. So that, and then next would be combative weapons retention shooting. So weapons retention shooting is just, hey, if we're in that stand-up grappling range where I can lay hands on you, if we're inside of that range, you should be shooting from a weapons retention position, which is just the pistol pulled all the way back in basically the butt of the pistol on your rib cage. So it's harder for the enemy to take it away from you. And then being able to fight through all of that. So all of those skills I put into the responsible armed citizen category. And that's what I recommend everyone starts with, because it is much more likely that, random violence at the gas station is much more likely than complete lawlessness, everyone going crazy, the crazy people trying to burn you out of your house, right? Which, if the crazy people are trying to burn you out of your house, your responsible armed citizen skills can help you, but your modern Minuteman skills, that's kind of the next level. That would be your carbine use, your precision rifle use, all your environmentals, your navigation, like that stuff. I tell guys, hey, make sure you can fight and shoot a pistol and work a blade before you jump into those other things, because while those other things, they might be fun to train. And I think if you're into this, like, man, you can protect your family a lot better if the crazy people come and they want to try and burn you out of your house and hurt your family. Man, you can do a lot of what we call, Tom Kyer calls it negative voting, right? So negative voting right here.
Nice.
That is easier to do with a rifle than it is with a pistol. So it's a good thing to be able to do, but we should always start with awareness, start with safety, start with carrying tools, start with understanding how to fight, understanding how to produce those tools under pressure. Like that's always where I would steer guys towards. So with my classes, it would be a responsible armed citizen class, basically any of the pistol or pistol combatives classes. Responsible armed citizen is one of them. Integrated combatives is probably the one that if you're already shoot pistols and carry, that's probably your biggest increase in capability will come with that class. The force on force class is another one because we're still teaching hard skills in each one of these classes. So we're still working pistol fundamentals. We're still working blade and combatives fundamentals. But then with the force on force course, we actually, you have to show up with an airsoft pistol and then we shoot each other and not in airsofting, but in specific, what we call situational drills. Yeah. So you're getting robbed or someone's trying to hurt your family and then go. Yeah. So any of those classes, the low light class would be another one. A lot of times these situations where you do need to protect yourself and your family come up at nighttime. So we start doing a low light class where we shoot that class day into night. So we don't show up until like noon or 12:30, something like that. And then we do a daytime block. And then we do a nighttime block where you're actually shooting your pistol with, under low light or no light conditions. And I jokingly say that course should be called "You're going to buy a flashlight and put it on your gun," because it's self-explanatory. You shoot a drill with a flashlight in your hand. You shoot a drill with a flashlight mounted on your pistol, and it's like, what do you want to do if that is saving your family's life? And it's a no-brainer. You're generally at least a third faster and probably 30% or more accurate as well. If you have a weapons mounted light versus if you're holding a handheld light while you're shooting. So all of those things is what I would recommend guys do first. And then once they have that, then get into the carbine classes, the precision rifle classes, the, intro to winter skills class, any of that kind of, which is still, we're with all those classes, we still do fundamentals with everything because that really is, there's no secret sauce to any of this stuff, right? Yeah. Being proficient with your firearms is just having mastered fundamentals, getting to what we call a unconscious competence level with your tools. The only way we get that is by deliberate training with feedback. So just continuously working. All right, guys, now I want you to focus on how you're holding the pistol, right? What's your grip? What are you pushing with? With the other strong hand, are you pushing thumb and middle finger, thumb and index finger? Okay, what part of the finger are you pulling the trigger? Right? All those things, you just have to do it over and over again until the conscious decision is, this dude's trying to kill my family. I need to pull my pistol out and shoot him right now. That's the conscious decision. Everything else then happens unconsciously or subconsciously, right? Your draw stroke just happens. Your grip happens. Your good trigger squeeze happens. Your recoil management happens. Like all those, the movement required, like all those things just happen after you've made a conscious decision that, yes, I need to use lethal force here.
Well, yeah, that's so, I wish I would have heard all that before I signed up for your course. No, I'm joking. That course it really was game changer. And it really sobered me up. And actually I was able to find a group here in Coeur d'Alene of some guys that have already trained with you. And that's been a huge blessing to me, is finding a group to train with consistently, which I've been really grateful for. You talked about the mindset. We did the mindset conversation around the campfire. Yep. And I don't know if you could, I know we've got to wrap things up here pretty quickly, but just like, your overall philosophy around self-defense, around protecting your family, what your mindset should be in, employing lethal force and how to avoid that. I really appreciated everything you had to say about that. So I don't know if you could, in a couple minutes, share somewhat of your philosophy around protecting your family as it pertains to a Christian, and this is stuff that you've talked about even through your career, where you talked about there being cultures within Christianity that are more pacifistic in their beliefs. And yet you've obviously come to a belief that you feel like you're really right before God and all this. I think that's been really helpful for me to hear. So I don't know if you could kind of close us out with that.
Yeah. So first off, how you feel about protecting yourself and your family should not contradict your most deeply held beliefs. Right. You can't go, well, yeah, I'm going to do this, and you say a lot of words with, with, oh, well, if this happens, I'm going to do this. But then when you're thinking about your most deeply held beliefs, you're like, I mean, this is maybe wrong. Like they have to be congruent, right? We'll talk about personas sometimes, or I think in Christianese, it would be your identity. So my identity as a Christ follower has to be like, that's more important to me than my identity as as a teacher or as a, protecting myself or protecting my family. Like those other things are lower identities or lower personas. So I have to make sure that it is congruent with it. If I end up doing something that is, when I look back on it, I'm like, oh man, that was over the top. I shouldn't have done that. Like I would have regret if that happened. And so, this gets into the willingness portion of the readiness formula, right? Which comes from Sayoc, just to sure we're giving credit where credit is due. Yeah. The readiness formula stands on 3 legs. We have awareness, we have willingness, and we have preparedness. And if we're lacking in any one of those areas, we're more likely to fail. So awareness, we talked about already. It's that head on a swivel, constantly asking yourself, who is this person? What are they doing here? Then willingness. And this is kind of the big one. What am I willing to do? Like, are you willing to shoot someone that is hurting your children, right? That's generally the easiest one for people to be like, oh yeah, I would definitely do that. Okay. How about your wife? How about your neighbor's kids? How about your neighbor? Right? Oh, where does that stop? Where does that willingness stop? And you need to think that through, because the time to think it through is now, not when you're in the heat of the moment, you're angry. Maybe you just got punched in the face. Like, are you going to pull a pistol out if it's a fist fight and you're still on your feet? Like that's something. And honestly, it's like, it depends. Are you 85 years old and like that shot almost knocked you out and the guy attacking you is 30? Like, yeah. Or are you a woman or is it me? Yeah. And like, no, I'm not going to shoot someone for punching me in the face. So like these are things that you need to think about ahead of time. With what are you willing to do? It's super, super important. If you don't think through your willingness beforehand, you end up with regret, and it's either regret due to inaction or regret due to overaction. And then we need to frame all these discussions within, well, what is my primary identity? Well, I'm a Christian. That's so I have to go, is what I'm doing lining up with what the Bible says? Yeah. Right. So if we got any King James only folks listening, if you turn to the set of rules in your Bible, all right, thou shalt not kill. Right. Well, if we look at any of the more modern translations, they all say murder. Right. And so the King James Version is not wrong when it says kill, because if you murder someone, you are killing them. But if you're killing someone, you're not necessarily murdering them. So if we look at what the ancient Hebrews had different words for killing, just like we today have different words for killing. Right. It's one thing if you're mad at your neighbor and you go shoot him, versus if you're driving on the interstate and someone runs in front of your car. Yeah. Right. Those are two separate things, both the way the law looks at it morally, like they're two separate things. So the ancient Hebrews had different things, different words for that. There are different punishments for, hey, if the axe head flies off and strikes your neighbor, this was one punishment. Yeah. Someone breaks into your house in the daytime, it's one thing. If it's at nighttime, it's another thing. So there were different contexts for that. And then also, I mean, the one that always resonated with me the most was David was a man after God's own heart. And David killed so many people that they sang songs about it, right? Saul has slain his thousands and David is tens of thousands, right? So he was not condemned for that. He had to pay a penalty for murdering, Uriah the Hittite and committing adultery with his wife. Right. So God called him out for that. He paid a penalty for that, not for not for the killing that he did in battle.
Sure.
And so but the other part of it is, and this is something that as I've been teaching more, I was, I don't know, probably 5 years ago or so, I was convicted about this. Is just, I recognize that people listen to me, or I've got a platform. And I'm like, I better be right about what I'm saying here, because this is important, because I am kind of speaking from a position of authority. And so I started looking at how did I approach killing when I was in service. And I think I was too nonchalant about it. Like, it was never I feel bad about this, or like, I felt bad if non-combatants were killed accidentally. But even that, like, that was very easy for me to go, well, if we wouldn't have gone in here, they just would have tasked an Air Force guy to drop bombs, and they would have killed everyone in here. So yeah, it's unfortunate that a single non-combatant was killed. However, like, this is war, bad things happen. Like, we weren't trying to do this. It's just unfortunately, like, we live in a sinful world and a fallen world, and this is part of the result of that. So as I looked at it, like, I think I was too nonchalant about it. Like, I didn't take it seriously enough. And so while it is not wrong to kill someone that is trying to hurt your family, also, like, realize that you are taking a human life. The shedding of blood, God takes very seriously, right? David did not build the temple; his son built the temple. So there is So, on one hand, don't you shouldn't feel bad about it. I mean, I certainly don't. Most of the guys that I know that shot people in battle, they don't have all this. I mean, I think it's so. It's actually something I want to write an article on, like, the whole pop culture of, like, when you shoot someone, you should feel bad, or you should, like, you're puking afterwards, or like, I didn't experience any of that. None of the guys I know went through any of that. And so, but I think in large part, it is because, like, I've thought through it, and it was never it's a serious thing, but it's not a wrong thing to do. I mean, there's, in a fallen world, I would say that the violence itself, it can be righteous violence or unrighteous violence, right? Someone's trying to kill your child and you shoot the guy in the face. That's righteous use of violence. You want your neighbor's stuff and you shoot him in the face. That is immoral use of violence right there. But in a fallen world, like, there is going to be violence, and I don't see the case for complete pacifism of, okay, I'm just going to let you do whatever you want to my family in a criminal sense. Like, I think there is a case for, okay, you're going to persecute us because we're believers. I can see a case for pacifism under those circumstances, but not in a criminal sense.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thanks for speaking to that. Like you said, just going through that thought exercise is, like, so valuable in and of itself. I can remember, I mean, even since I went to your course and you did that mindset talk, I've made conscious decisions on, like, almost every week where Katie and I go on our dates. I've now even kind of changed where we frequent. Not that we were at, rowdy places before, but I just kind of try to avoid even the proximity to them, or the time of the day that we go to. And I think it's a large part of the reason I've changed some of my habits is because thinking through some of these things that you had us think through, and really having a sober perspective in regards to all of this and protecting. Because I mean, I'd rather go out to dinner at 5 p.m. than, because the bars aren't getting very rowdy around downtown until 10 or 11, and I'd rather just get in and get back home get to my quiet home, not have to deal with all those things if I can avoid it. Which is, I think I'm so grateful you speak to that. Bill, thank you so much for your time. This has been so encouraging, so helpful. I'm going to link where people can find you. You've got your AMTAC shooting courses, you've got your knives, which I'm stoked about. I think I've shared about your knives already. Is there anything else you kind of want to speak to? You've talked about like starting like a merchandise line. I don't know if that's something that's up and running right now, or
So we do. So our three businesses are, we have AMTAC Shooting, that's our training company, and we have AMTAC Blades, which is our knife company. And then we now have AMTAC Gear as well. AMTAC Gear is for, we actually just added med kits to there. So
cool.
that is going to, right now it's t-shirts, hats, stickers, swag, basically stuff like that. And then also now med kits.
Great.
So if you don't have a med kit, you should probably have a med kit. You're actually more likely to use a med kit than you are a pistol.
Yeah.
So that's another piece of training that guys should definitely get underneath their belts. So yeah, that's, that would be ways to support us is, and any of those websites. If you don't train, I would highly encourage you go out and train. Cause it is valuable. Also, like, there's just a good, for the men that are listening, it's just a good kind of manly, hey, get out and train. Right. I feel good when I do that, when I go do physically hard thing. I think it's just something that as men, it's innate in us, is to do hard stuff, to have challenges like that. And to feel, and we should have, as heads of households, we should have answers for, well, what if the door starts thumping right now and it's three guys with pipes and they want to hurt your family? Like, as the head of a household, we should have answers for what we do with that. Yeah. So yeah, I would encourage people with that. And then, the most important exhortation is, follow after Christ. It is the most important thing. Nothing else you do in life is going to matter 100 years from now, other than what, how you gave glory to God. So I would just, be deliberate about that. Don't just be like, oh yeah, that's a little part of my life. Be that is the most important part of your life, and try and approach your life that way and align your life so that so that every day you're like, God, how can I give you glory? How can I follow after you? But help me to want to follow after you more.
Amen. Wow. Thank you so much. What a great way to close out. Bill, thank you so much. Folks that are listening, I'm going to link everything. You can follow Bill on Instagram and any other platforms that he's on. Bill, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, Elisha.